Hey guys, Nathan Brendan Masters, and today I'm going to ask the question, is the movie The Conjuring, particularly The Conjuring 2, haunted? So those of you who've been with me for a while, you know, a few years ago on my other channel, I did a video about when I took over a friend of mine's lease. I moved in, and apparently the apartment was haunted. So a few days ago, I came upon some videos about the movie The Conjuring 2 and how people were watching it, and they were, after watching the film, they were having experiences. They were experiencing hauntings. Now, generally, I have watched horror films all my life, okay, since I was a kid. But normally it was stuff like Freddy Krueger, Jason, stuff like that, stuff with this fictional character. But I generally prefer supernatural horror films or action horror type horror films, stuff like, Underworld and things like that, where it's like, people fighting supernatural villains and things. And generally, stuff like that isn't particularly scary. It tries to be, but it's not. I mean, even stuff like Scream isn't scary. Stuff that's actually scary is stuff that's cerebral. It makes you think. Like, what was that movie, Megan is Missing? That's scary. Now, it's not scary really until like the very end of it, but it's scary when you start thinking about it, because realistically, stuff like that happens in real life every day. So for me to get scared by a horror film, and nothing was more frightening than my dad's ghost stories, because my dad was born with a veil over his face. So if there was a ghost around, it'll find him. Okay, it'll go, hey, it'll pop up, say hi to him. But that was actually scarier than horror films. All right, the night the hunting started, I watched Paranormal Activity and The Conjuring, and I believe it was Conjuring 2. I watched them back to back, right? Now, Paranormal Activity, it was interesting, really liked it, but it did get you at the end, but it was mainly that jump scare, okay? Paranormal Activity is scary because it actually shows this kind of activity, and it's the kind of activity that people talk about. Those kinds of films, to me, are a little bit scarier. Now, Conjuring, not so much, because it was a little bit over the top. But that's my kind of film, the more over the top kind of horror. My favorite horror film right now is a film called Possession of Hannah Grace. I just think that, like, the escape horror, love it. Love it, love escape horror. Especially when it's like somebody trying to escape supernatural horror. I like that. That's my thing. And now that takes me to my theory. Now, according to the articles and things, they were using real names of beings and things in the movie, which probably kind of a dumb thing to do. But then again, I used to name Lilith all the time, and there actually are people who believe in Lilith. They actually believe in her as a being, okay? So, you have that. But the thing about this is, I don't necessarily believe the movie itself is hunting anyone. I believe that if you already have things in your home or around you that are there, and they haven't been riled up, that sometimes the film is actually riling those things up, or your fear is actually riling them up. When I first moved into that apartment, two things I noticed. The bedroom was always cold. It wasn't like, like you see in the movies, like, oh, it's so cold and the smoke is coming from your mouth and all that. No, it wasn't that. But the bedroom was always a little bit colder than all the other rooms in the house. Now, you can chalk that up to, poor insulation in the bedroom, right? Not a big deal. And when I moved there, I pretty much stayed in the living room, because that's where my studio was, and I had a nice little futon. in the studio, in the living room, and I just stayed in there. I pretty much used my bedroom for storage and for working out. Now the thing about the bedroom is that I would always, like, if I stayed in there too long, I would always get kind of afraid. I would always feel like, I don't want to be in here. And there was never any real reason for it. Nothing particularly happened. I just didn't want to be there. It's like that particular place in the house, I didn't want to be. It felt scary. Now, you would think with all my, writing about, Ghost and, Victor Locke Demon Hunter and stuff like that, the amount of that I would kind of think, hey, this is kind of weird. But no, because in real life, you don't. You don't consider, ooh, a ghost is going to get me because it's real life. But what ends up happening is I'm here and I'm like, okay, this is kind of creepy. All right. But that was when I first moved in. Okay. So I had been there for, at that point, probably a year or so, year and a half maybe. I've been in this apartment, and at that time I was, by this time I was getting ready to move to another apartment. I was having a few financial issues, and so I was going, I was leaving there and going somewhere else. But here's the thing: one night I watched these two movies back to back, right? Okay, and I just felt like this incredible fear. It was like just complete, because I had finished watching the films and I was like, okay, that's pretty good. There was a little bit of, ooh, that's kind of, but pretty good. It's kind of a little thing you get after you watch a good horror film, but nothing happens, right? It's just, you're kind of creeped out. But later on, something did happen. This incredible fear came over me, and I just couldn't shake it. And normally you could kind of just shake it off. You're like, okay, it's a horror film. But this incredible fear came over me and I couldn't shake it. And this is what happened. I get up and I go to the bathroom. I'm getting ready to go to the bathroom, and the closet door opens. Okay, now, this is not one of those like, walk-in closets or something like that. This is one of those push, you open, it's an accordion closet. You open it up, so that just opens. It has no reason to open. Nobody's standing there opening it. It just opens. And I just stop and I just look at it and I freak out. So the thing about it is, in the films, it's always somebody, there's always this idea of, okay, the person doesn't know what to do. In real life, you really don't know what to do, because do you call a priest? What do you do? Do you even know exactly what's happening? Because most people aren't going to think, oh, wow, this is really haunted. No, they're going to think, you crazy. That's generally what people are going to think. So you do have that thing, that fear. What exactly do I do? Now, before this happened, though, there was another incident. And this was one that I just kind of explained away by saying, I just left this stuff open. When I left for work one day, came back home, my lights were on in the bedroom and the closet doors were open. Again, these are accordion style closets. The doors are open. Now this is kind of like, you can walk into this, but it's an accordion style door. So I just thought, I was rushing out and I just didn't turn anything off. That's not typically me. When I get out, I turn all my stuff off, close my closet. I closed my closet especially because I had a lot of prop weapons and stuff in there. So I would definitely make sure that was closed, because I didn't, sometimes maintenance comes through and I didn't want them to, they would typically let you know that they're coming through, but I didn't want no problems. Okay. So that was the thing that happened. And I just kind of blew it off as, okay. And what was weird about it was the lights were brighter. Like they weren't just on, they were like really bright. It's brighter than they normally were. And I'm like, what the hell? The hell's going on with, and I was like, did they come in and change the lights? I'm like, oh, well, maybe I just left the lights on. And because that's the thing that makes the most sense, right? You always go with the thing that makes the most sense, left the lights on. So if I'm remembering this correctly, this happened before I watched the movies. So there was already something there, but it really didn't manifest until around that time when I was, just like a few weeks, probably about a month or so before I actually moved out of the apartment. So it was kind of weird that it didn't manifest early on. It manifested then, which was fine by me because I'm leaving. Feel free to stay there as long as you want because I'm not there. There's another thing that happened where I was in the mirror. You're in the bathroom. I'm brushing my teeth. I gargle and all that stuff. And I'm thinking about all this stuff. And I'm because I'm getting ready to come over my parents' house at the time. So I'm thinking about all this stuff. And I'm like, this is just, there has to be the reasonable explanation, right? Because I'm that guy. Even though I believe in this stuff, it's reasonable explanations before you think, hey, hunting. And of course, there is that part that's like, dude, you're obviously being hunted. This is a hunting. Or you're crazy. You think, okay, if you think about Victor Locke, Demon Hunter, what does he think? He's like, hey, you're obviously a demon hunter and this is happening. And then there's the other part that's, no, dude, you're a crazy guy, except for the fact that for whatever reason, other people can see it happening too. Okay, so there you go. That's the thing. What do you do? Because this thing is going on. So I gargle. I set the Dixie cup on the shelf. Don't set it on the edge of the shelf. I set it on the shelf. The Dixie cup, I fixed myself up and everything. The Dixie cup tilts and falls off the shelf. Okay, and it's like, bruh, what's really going on? So I did do some praying. After that, didn't have any real problems anymore. What's funny about this is I was actually shooting Epitaph Bread and Salt at that time, so I was actually playing Victor Locke Demon Hunter. So I guess in real life I did do a little bit of demon hunting. But I didn't have any more problems after that point, and I moved. And when I did the perfect letter, there are people who would say, how come ghosts always do that? They always turn on water or they always open doors. I don't know. You tell me, because they do that shit. That's they MO. They like to open doors and turn on lights and shit. So when you see that stuff in horror films and things, yeah, those are the things that happen. Now when you see the more extreme stuff, it's when horror films stop being. I mean, that's the suspension of disbelief. The more extreme stuff. You know what I'm saying? And that's when the films are actually more entertaining. So a scarier horror film is when people actually stop and start thinking, can this force actually do this thing? Can it do this? And that's the thing that becomes scary about it. So do you think Conjuring 2 is haunted, or that it causes these experiences? Or do you think that the things are already there before the experiences, before this kind of thing happens? Do you think that the beings or whatever are already in that space before it happens? Or is this all bullcrap and it's just people's imagination and somehow their mind is playing tricks on them and making actual physical occurrences happen? Something like that. You guys take it easy. Nathan Brandon Masters. Awesome.
Don't look back, we're here to stay. A life we knew would come one day. And this is it, the borderline to where the future leaves us behind. The fire